I'm Tenitra Batiste. And yeah, it's December, but it still feels like Groundhog Day.
I'm Tori McElhaney. My mama always told me if I don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and we got 4 more weeks of this, and then it's all over. Okay, thank God.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and Raheem doesn't have an answer, but we do.
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis, and Falcons senior reporter Tori McElhaney. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So, was it what the Seahawks did or what the Falcons didn't? We'll discuss. And yeah, you still have to give Bijan his flowers. We'll download on that. Also, where's that Jalen Watson type effort from this team? We'll debate it. But first, let's talk about this groundhog situation with this franchise. So kind of taking it 30,000 feet, Jarvis. The Falcons locked up another losing season and were officially eliminated from playoff contention with Sunday's 37-9 loss to the Seattle Seahawks. But maybe the biggest pain point is that we're looking at the fact that Atlanta lost for the 7th time in 8 games. You locked up the franchise's 8 straight losing campaign. That matches the longest stretch of futility in franchise history. So why are we here? Why are we here at this point of ineptitude again?
You know what? I'm glad you framed it that way. Talking about a 30,000 foot view. I can point out some stuff I did not like when I went back and watched the film, but I think I'm gonna back this thing up a little bit.
Okay.
Like I think that listening to Raheem Morris's post-game press conference and him pointing out the fact that kickoff return was the thing that was just so debilitating that they just couldn't. That was the thing. That was the reason why they lost this game, or that was the snowball effect, right? And then as I continued, I heard Kirkington come on and say, "You're like, man, that doesn't matter. Like, you have to. This is a professional football. We have to figure out a way to come back." And just from looking at that and thinking about that and just the mindset, right? It was an automatic answer. You came right off the bat with it. It wasn't anything that was conjured up or anything like that. When you got the head coach saying that this one play was the reason why we lost this game, I think it's a mindset, because I feel like look at when the Falcons get down. We've talked about on plenty post-game shows and our weekly during the week as well when we talk about Falcon squad. It's just like when this team gets down, it's over. It's over. Like even if they were to even come back and tie this game up, we still feel like, or I know I felt like, yeah, they're still gonna figure out a way to lose this game. And I think that's come from the mind. That's come from the coach. If your coach is sitting up here pointing out one singular thing, that the reason why you lost this game, and your quarterback is coming right behind you and saying, "Man, we got 2 more quarters to go. Like, we got to figure out a way to get back. You were down 1 score. You were down 1 score, and that was the thing. That was the thing that took you out." So yeah, I think it's a matter of the mindset of the head coach, and we all know that teams take on the identity of their head coach, and that's why we're here where we are right now. And this team not really having a chance once they get down. Once they get punched in the mouth a couple times, it's just like, all right, here we go again.
Yeah. And for you, Tori, and you can take, Tori, the 30,000 foot view from the perspective of this regime and kind of the trickle down, or you can take it from the 30,000 foot view of, we've been having this conversation, Tori, for going on a decade. I mean, but ultimately speaking, it's like the ineptitude and kind of coming back to the same space, seemingly at this point of the season, every single year, year after year after year. I mean, it's just frustrating And I'm sure for you, because you cover it even more closely than we are, being in the building every day. I mean, but you just have to ask that question, like, how did we get here again? Like the ineptitude where once again, Tori, we started this season off very, very encouraged by what we saw in the draft, encouraged by what we saw in the pickups in the offseason, what we saw in training camp, all of the above. And even when the Falcons took an L to the Bucs, shake that off. Maybe the Bucs were a little bit readier. But again, Tori, 4 weeks left to the season, and here we are.
Yeah, I think that the bulk of frustration lies in the fact that there was an understanding, or at least a hope, that issues had been fixed.
Yes.
So pass rush, you saw what they do. They try and fix the pass rush. This whole quarterback situation where they go and sign Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., whether or not you believe about the way that they went about doing it, their logic in doing it was that they didn't want to get into the same situation that they had in the final Matt Ryan years, where they did not have a succession place in play at all. So there were these things where you felt that they were fixing issues that had been plaguing the team and the organization for years. And now you get into the point where even like halfway through this season and now in the back half of this season, it's like those fixes, those attempts to fix things didn't pan out. Yes, the Falcons have a pass rush right now, but they're still losing games. Yes, you're excited about what this defense has done, but you're only excited about what that first half defense did yesterday, not what the second half defense did. You were excited about what you had in Michael Penix Jr., and now you don't even know if you're going to be able to start the season next year with him. So even something as simple as receivers, like who would have thought that at the end of last season, you had your core group of receivers returning, 3 of whom were guys who had career years in 2024. Nothing changed with the receiver room. And yet here you are in week 14, week 15, and you don't have anyone outside of Drake London that you feel you can rely on. Like those are all things that you thought were fixed. And that's why there's frustration. And that's why I understand the frustration and why it does feel so bleak right now, is because you thought that all of these things you could tick off and you could check that they were on the right path. And now you're looking at it and you're like, actually, no, there's no evidence to feel that way.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point, Tori, about how we feel and kind of like what you're looking at, juxtaposing it to last season with the Falcons, but then even juxtaposing it to this season with the Seahawks, because they're a team that has talent in the similar space that the Falcons do. And they're a team that, and granted, they won more games last year. They won 10 games last year. So you knew they were kind of trending up just a little bit more, or had the opportunity to trend up just a little bit more this year. But they also have arguably, if not the most difficult division to run through, maybe, 1, 2, 3, if you will. However, you're seeing them produce. You're seeing them figure it out. You saw them figure it out the second half of yesterday's game. And I think that's frustrating as well, because Aaron, when you start looking at those teams that were maybe with their coach like year one last year, or they were maybe ascending, and you thought that the Falcons would be right in that space, it's hard when you're staring one of those very teams in the face yesterday and kind of seeing in them what you thought you would see in this Falcons team in year 2 under Raheem Morris.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you juxtapose these two teams because, they hire Mike Macdonald during that same coaching cycle where the Falcons hire Raheem Morris. Mike Macdonald coming off the year in Baltimore where he produced one of the best defenses in the NFL in 2023, and then goes to Seattle. And the main reason why that Seahawks team last year, as you mentioned, won 10 games was mostly because of their defense, not necessarily because their offense wasn't particularly high power. They obviously had their moments with Geno Smith and DK and all those guys, but then they get to the end of the season and Mike Macdonald's looking at the offensive performance and saying it's not good enough. And so they kind of clean house and they kind of remake their offense with Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, and they bring in Clint Kubiak quarterback as an upgrade to Ryan Grubb.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing that sort of pay off for that team. They had one of the best offenses in the NFL during the month of September. And it's sort of fallen back down a little bit more to earth, but it's still one of the better offenses in the NFL. And then the Falcons got, to experience that firsthand in the second half of this past game. And then you also have the defense continuing to play at a high level and several advanced metrics indicating that Seahawks defense is the top defense in the NFL currently. And so you see a Seahawks team that is living up to the expectations based around what they want to be, which is a good defense with a high-powered offense, and that is allowing them to win a lot of football games, as you mentioned, in a tough division. And meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons have not been able to figure that whole thing out. As Jarvis says, this team struggles to deal with adversity, as they saw in that third quarter, and that has been a consistent through line throughout this season, that, they play a good first half, and then the third quarter hits, and they're terrible in the third quarter, and then maybe they put it together in the fourth quarter to make it a game late, but they haven't been able to finish those instances, and obviously yesterday they were not able to get it done really either in the third or fourth quarter of that Seahawks game. And then piggybacking off what Tori says, it's like, it feels like this team has been playing whack-a-mole the last couple of years, where it's just like, okay, here's an issue. Here's the quarterback issue. And it's like, well, 2023, it's like, oh, well, the quarterback's not a problem. We got Desmond Ridder. And it's like, well, the quarterback was a problem. So 2024, okay, we're going to fix the quarterback issue, but you still got to deal with the pass rush. But, we're not going to worry about the pass rush. And then the pass rush becomes an issue. Yep. And then, you invest in the pass rush this offseason, and now these other issues, you got the wide receiver core, the cornerback room, the offensive line needs to be remade, and it feels like the Falcons are constantly chasing success as opposed to getting ahead of it, and that was, I think, contributes to a lot of the frustration, because as you look towards the immediate future, it's hard to be as optimistic as you maybe have been the last couple of years, where it's like, okay, well, if we just figure out this one element, we'll be fine. And it's like, no, there's multiple elements, and some of the elements, as Tori mentioned, haven't quite been figured out. Like you maybe have solved the pass rush, maybe, we'll see, right, what these young guys develop into, and do they let guys like Leonard Floyd and Arnold Ebiketie and David Onyemata walk out the door, and does that lead to a drop off similar to what we saw in 23 to 24 when you let a lot of veterans go, or in 2017 to 2018 when you let a lot of veterans go? And then you still have questions about the quarterback position, and then you still have all these other issues on the roster that you still have to address. And so the Falcons, I think, have a lot of work to do over the next couple of years. This is not going to be a simple fix for this football team. And, on top of that, that's the long-term outlook, and the short-term outlook is just like they just really struggle to find ways to win football. And so it's just a deluge of a disappointment with the Atlanta Falcons, because it's like you can't even go to the games today and feel good about, well, they're at least, doing fine, at least maybe for two quarters. And then long-term outlook looks bleaker than it has looked in a very, very long time for this football team.
Yeah. And speaking of that, the third quarter struggles are absolutely epic when it comes to this team, JD, because, hey, Falcons going into week 14, minus 19-point differential in that quarter, pretty much bottom of the barrel in the league. And then Sunday, the Seahawks dropped 17. That's the most the Falcons have allowed this season. So it's like, you hate to say getting progressively worse, but that's what it feels like, especially then you put on top of that, the Falcons didn't even put points on the board. I mean, what do you, in that quarter, what do you think is the biggest reason that the Falcons have struggled this season to start the second halves?
Because they never have the ball. Let's say that. Because they always want to take the ball because they're going to score. And by the way, I did a little research, T. Going to find out that they're one of the worst teams in the entirety of the NFL when it comes to scoring a touchdown on opening drives. So, make the adjustment, sir. I'm not going to go on that rant again, but to answer your question, I feel like a lot of times it just goes to show when it talks about adjustments. A lot of times when you go into halftime, you're responding to what happened to you in that first half. And then if things are going well, you're reiterating what you did in the first half, and you're throwing things out there that they actually could do to try to adjust to the adjustment, right? So, and you have those conversations. But, when the Falcons went in, the Seahawks were able to get, that field goal right before half, and then they made the adjustments. They said, all right, guys, we're going to start this thing off right. We got the ball. We're taking that kickoff, and we're going to take it to the house, because that's been a weak point for them the entire season. And we see some things that they haven't adjusted. They haven't made adjustments. And then what happens? As soon as they come out, Arnie Ebiketie is on kickoff, a guy that is not an open field tackler. So I don't understand why he's on there in the first place. He misses the tackle. She is off to the races. So it's just, if that is your response to trying to fix things, like you're in a really bad space when it comes to second half of games, when people aren't able to take advantage of your deficiencies in the first half. They're going to make sure they reiterate that at halftime. Like, hey, man, we need to take advantage of this. And that's exactly what the Seahawks did. So it all boils down to not being able to make adjustments initially. And then if your things are going well for you, you're not adjusting to the potential adjustment that's going to come, because it's going to come. This is the NFL. That's a really good football team. So for you to expect things to turn out the same way, and you diddle around on offense, and your defense is going to hold those guys down for 4 quarters, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to get shut down no, it doesn't work like that. So yeah, I think that having thinking highly of yourself when it comes to who you are and what you actually are, that got them in trouble. And you see what happened, and it happens consistently.
I think a point too that I think I hear a lot from the fans is this idea of doing the same thing over and over and getting and expecting different results, and like that being the definition of insanity. And like I think that there's this one example of like third downs that third downs continue to be a place where drives go to die. And they were 1 of 13 yesterday on third down. And I mean, ultimately, like, that's not sustainable. We've seen now since week 8, the Falcons have one of the worst, if not the worst, third down offenses in the league. Like, they put up arguably, I think there's a stat that yesterday was the worst third down conversion percentage that the Falcons have had since 1991.
Yes.
Like, the thing about it is like these issues, like on third down, these issues on kickoff return, like some of these issues defensively where they're kind of like not really standing tall when they need to, like none of this stuff is like new stuff. Like, and I think that's why there is like so much frustration, is that like these problems are issues that we've been talking about since before the bye week, like, and in the weeks thereafter. Like, we're now going into week 15 and we're still talking about the same things. And I think that's like where I have a lot of empathy for the fans right now, because if there isn't anything that's being changed like noticeably, then like, of course they're mad. Of course they're upset. Like, if their team's losing games, like, I don't blame anyone for that. Like, and they're not like seeing the adjustments needed in order to find success, kind of using that third down example. Like, this is something we've been talking about for weeks. Like, it's not new.
Yeah. And talking about what Jarvis said, where it's like this team continuously comes out flat in the third quarter, and other teams come out and they get the spark that they need, either whether you want to blame that on adjustments or coaching, all those various things. But like, that has been a consistent through line for the Atlanta Falcons. Now, occasionally they've come out in the third quarter, but it's usually been because it's been sparked by like a big kickoff return by Jamal Agnew, or Bijan busting a 60-yard, play or something like that. And like, it just kind of feels like the Falcons are kind of waiting around for someone to make a play. And far too often it's the opposing team that is the team that's making the play. And the Falcons are just kind of looking around me like, okay, who's going to step up and do something? And then everybody else is kind of doing that, and no one does it. And you get into this third quarter malaise that has been a consistent through line. And, Jarvis said it, like, maybe they could switch some things up in terms of how they attack things, and maybe try to flip that by, let's defer to the second half, and hopefully that will allow us to spark things. But Raheem has stated several times that he's a firm believer in getting the ball first to start fast, and we'll see if he changes that over the last 4 weeks. But I remember, I think the last time the Falcons scored on their opening drive in the third quarter was in the Colts game, And that was a game where the Colts took the ball first in that game, and the Falcons got the ball first in the second half. And so it's like, coincidence? Probably not, but we'll talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah, and we'll also talk about some of the weak points that you guys alluded to, but asking the question as well, was it the Seahawks and what they did, or was it what the Falcons didn't do? We'll take all of it under further review. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. So because Aura isn't your average picture frame, you can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. So packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed. It's a huge win. And it's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer. And you can also add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code locked on. This deal is exclusive to our listeners, and frames do sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. So first and foremost, we want to just thank you guys again for rocking with us, especially because we know it's been a challenge this season, but we appreciate you making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day, and also want to thank you again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now, we kind of touched on special teams yesterday, which wasn't so special again, but at post-game, we talked about that. Poor play calling, the kickoff return to start the second half. But what we didn't get a chance to talk about, and Tori, we want to get your thoughts on this as well, is Zane Gonzalez missing that 50-yarder, booting the kick out of bounds to give Seattle the ball at the 40. I mean, I was doing some research and just kind of reading up and listening, just trying to figure out what exactly went wrong on that particular kick. And the consensus was snap to hold to kick time. Way too long, in addition to, of course, weak blocking. Again, something that we shouldn't be talking about in week 14. But it does beg the question, A, why are we having this conversation again this deep into the season? And B, are we at a point where you keep Gonzalez, or do you throw Craig out there to see what he's working with for the rest of this season and potentially next?
I mean, I think in terms of like special teams issues, like there are bigger fish like than what Zane Gonzalez is or isn't doing. I think that he's the third kicker that this team has run out there this season. Like that's kind of par for the course. It's what you get. And I think that like the blocked field goal, like at the end of the day, I'm not really putting that at the feet of Zane Gonzalez. The kickoff returns, I'm not putting at the feet of Zane Gonzalez. Like there's again, issues within like blocking and tackling and fundamentals and lane integrity that we're talking about here. And that's like, I don't think that making a move to like Lenny Krieg is like going to change anything. I still don't think that Lenny Krieg is ready, just based on the fact that the Falcons went through how many like tryouts, and bringing different guys in, and how many kickers they've signed over the course of the last, season. If he was ready, he would have been ready like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago. So I'm not, in terms of the special teams conversation, like Zane Gonzalez and the kicker, like the kicking situation is actually a little further down right now for me.
Yeah, because like you said, when we look at some of the decisions that were made when it comes to blocking, when you look at snap to hold to kick time, like he's not determining what the length of that time is by the time the ball gets to him for him to kick. So yeah, those are where I'm seeing Free, like, why are we having those fundamental conversations at this point in the season? But I think it's because of what Tori mentioned. the bigger picture of the bigger issues on special teams?
Yeah, the special teams has been an absolute mess. That's the kindest way we can describe it. And I think Tori's right, where it feels like at this point in time when Zane Gonzalez messes up, it's like, okay, well, that's par for the course. Like, okay, the Falcons going to mess up at some point on special teams. And most of the issues with Zane Gonzalez are not necessarily on Zane Gonzalez, as she sort of pointed out there. And I think Zane has played well enough that he should be in the mix next year. He should be brought back to compete for the kicking spot. Obviously, I don't think he's done enough to be like, oh, he's our guy for the next 5 years or anything like that. But certainly, I think probably is the front runner / incumbent going into 2026. Whether Lenny Krieg is in that mix, I think is still an open question, because piggybacking on what Tori said, like the fact that the Falcons haven't really tried him out there tells me that they took a flyer on a developmental kicker. Mm-hmm. And whether that development is going to manifest at any point in the future, I think is very much a toss-up at best at this point in time. So I think there's a real possibility that the Falcons could have 3 kickers on the roster going into training camp next year. And, Lenny Krieg is one of them, but probably not necessarily the guy that's in the mix. And so you bring in another guy to directly compete with Zane Gonzalez for that kicking spot. And hopefully you resolve whatever the issues that are going there right now. So I feel like that's kind of how you manage the kicking situation. As for the rest of special teams, with the exception of Liam McCullough, now a proud father, I just think you take a grenade and just toss it in that room, close the door and blow it up, and then, let the bodies hit the floor, so to speak, and then, just completely tear that whole thing down. And so it's like Zane Gonzalez, Liam McCullough, you're good. Everybody else, you can go at this point in time to address those other issues. But we'll see if that results in the positives that we needed to happen.
And Jarvis, if I could just, before you answer that, I saw something in the chat, the comments, that I thought was interesting, but I wanted to just address it real quick. So Maz N6N asked, Tori, please ask the head coach, how come we scored 9 points on offense and the blame attention is put on special teams? So Tori, if I may take just a little bit of license here, it's not that we're not looking at the 9 points scored on offense. Oh, we're coming for them too. But the point is, when there's conversation throughout the course of the week.
Hour.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I was asking a question about special teams. I'm going to answer a special teams question.
Exactly. Right. So thank you. Exactly. Okay. And I want to say this too. Like, we're equal opportunity in giving you your flowers or telling you where you went wrong. Like, we have no problem talking about that. But it's interesting if you look back at some of the questions or some of the conversation or the concern last week, a lot of it was around special teams, right? And when conversation happens, and I apologize, I forget the name, but questions being asked of the special teams coordinator or questions being asked about special teams, and specific guys are mentioned from Seattle's special teams unit, that's when there's a challenge there, right? And I think too, again, you're talking about a game that's 6-6. So really neither of these offenses is really doing a bang up job in the first half. So what makes the difference? A kickoff return for a touchdown, 100 freaking yards to open the third quarter with a team that is absolutely bereft of success in the third quarter throughout the course of the season. So that's why we are spending time on special teams, because the third phase matters. It matters in a game that's 6-6 for a team that's desperately in search of a win. So no, we'll come for offense in a little bit, but this is one of those where you do have to talk about it, because again, Jarvis, when we start thinking about a snap, a hold, kick, and the time that it takes to get that in place to the time that Zane Gonzalez actually has to kick the ball, or we're still talking about, like Tori was saying, we're talking about blocking, and then we're looking at not just that kickoff return, but you made a great point. You put Arnold WKT out there to do something, and that's kind of what happens. So it's also the schematics that are still troublesome at this point in the season.
Also, Tenitra, sorry, Jarvis, before you start going, I will say, like, we're talking about special teams because the fact of the matter is that over the last 2 weeks, you've left 10 points on a 10-point swing on the board or off the board because of special teams blunders. You muff a punt on the 7-yard line that allows the Jets last week to score. You miss a field goal last week. You get a blocked field goal this week. You have a kickoff return for a touchdown. 10 points versus the Jets, 10 points versus the Seahawks. 10 points matter in this league. 20 points over 2 weeks matters in this league. That's why we're talking about special teams.
Yeah, and you boot a kick out of bounds. You give Seattle the ball. You might as well say
40-yard line.
Yeah, exactly. So you automatically right. You want to talk about flipping the field. You want to talk about if flip the field was an example or a person. Well, there it is. So yeah, Tori, you're right. When you start talking about the subtle differences, also, I'm sorry, Jarvis, just one more thing. When you start talking about going from good to great, or you start talking about going from bad to good, these are the little things that take you from bad to good, or from good to great, or that take you from good down to bad. These are the things that Seattle did that allowed them not just to win that game, but allowed them to stay in the conversation about being at the top of their division. And actually, after Chicago Bears lost yesterday that turned things topsy-turvy in the NFC, it keeps Seattle in position to potentially be the number 1 seed. That's why you talk about special teams, because when you start thinking about the trickle down, it's that little thing that makes a team go potentially from good to great.
Yeah, and the thing when it comes to that, like, it's a reason why it's 3. We talk about 3 phases. If you win 2 out of 3 phases, more than likely you're gonna get the dub. You know, and so Seattle, it's safe to say Seattle won the defensive phase of the game, and their special teams, they won special teams, and their offense didn't start clicking until midway third quarter after that special team debacle. So when you think about it from that aspect, it's like it can be the difference maker in winning a football game. And of course, and for sure it matters. And it also matters when it comes to roster building, guys who aren't starters being good at special teams. Josh Woods, man, I go to bat for that man. That man is out there playing. Yeah, I'm so glad he was back on back on special teams this week, because when you think about, guys not being able to start, like starting caliber guys, right? They're not starting caliber guys. You better bring some doggone value to your special teams. Which brings me to the question, why is JD Bertrand on this roster? Why? We know he's not a starting caliber player. And watching him on special teams, he doesn't touch a soul. How? How is that possible? The man is 5 yards from you before the ball is snapped. So how do you not get even breathe on the man? Breathe on the man to help you return Jamal Agnew out. You don't touch the man. And if you look at it, really take a look at it, you can see if you make that block, he might actually get a decent return. Or he might take it to the house. So I just think that there's just, and Felipe Franks not blocking. Like, come on, what are we doing? This is why you're on the roster. This is why you made the roster. Not for getting up under center and doing quarterback sneaks on third down when everybody in the building know you're going to do it, and throwing a toss to Tyler Algier. As you can see, I'm still touched by that. So it just like, it just makes no sense to me that you have guys that don't bring value. If you don't bring value to this roster, I don't care what number it is, whether you number 1, QB1, or you number 53. Like, dog, you got to be able to bring something to the table when you do touch that field. And you got guys that are at the bottom of this roster not doing what they're supposed to do. And then you putting guys in situations, on Ebiketie, that he's not going to succeed. Making the open field tackle? No. No. The way he's going to succeed is rushing the quarterback. And you can barely get on the field with that. So, yeah, special
some
teams.
Of those,
and roster construction matters.
And some of those may be the reason, if we look at it in its totality, in why we saw what we saw in the first half versus what we saw in the second half against the defense. But I still want to ask you guys if you think that was more Falcons or if you think that was more the Seahawks. We'll talk about that next up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, but let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Now, the seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Prices include fees up front, which you're going to love. So no last second surprises at checkout, and alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go Game Time. So, Aaron, we talked about it a few minutes ago, the fact that the Falcons allowed 6 points in the first half, tied for the fewest the team has allowed in the first half this season. But then that second half came, and the Seahawks rattled off 17 points in the third quarter, and we know what the end result was. But was the second half defensive sort of debacle more about what the Seahawks did or what the Falcons did not do?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I'll put more of the credit on the Seahawks.
Yeah, give me your 60-40 kind of.
Yeah. I think the Falcons went into this game where basically they made the decision. We believe that we can man up the Seahawks, and they had AJ Terrell against Jackson Smith and Jigba. And for the first half of the game, that went pretty well for the Falcons, that they were able to keep him contained. And I felt like, particularly in the third quarter, you started to see the Seahawks exploit that with certain route concepts, that they were able to take advantage of the Falcons' man coverage with some of those crossing routes, which are kind of the most difficult routes to cover for a man coverage corner, where you have to basically chase a guy halfway across the field. And the Seahawks were able to get a couple of explosives on that one scoring drive in the third quarter. Then you saw the Cooper Kupp touchdown where they were able to use a rub route against the Alford. That's another way that you beat man coverage. And so I think the Seahawks basically were like, okay, we see what the Falcons are doing with their man coverage in the first half. And they went out in the second half and were like, okay, well, here's the way that we can beat this with these, pretty basic ways to beat it. And, that's kind of the issue when it comes to defense, where regardless of what style of defense you want to play, there's always ways to exploit it. Defense is really just kind of doing your best to kind of hold the line, as opposed to we're going to play a style of defense that is going to automatically shut down a team. It boils down to you make some choices, you got to go out there and execute. I also think the Falcons were probably a little bit better getting pressure early in the game. That also slowed down the Seahawks offense. And as the game wore on, with Jalen Walker exiting the game, James Pierce dealing with his quad injury as well, that led to them not being able to get as effective pressure as the game wore on. So I think it was mostly the Seahawks making adjustments in this game that led to their success more so than the Falcons not doing anything. It's just, I think Seattle had good answers for what the Falcons were doing well in the first half.
Yeah. What about you, Jarvis? When you look at the results in the second half, especially that third quarter, do you feel like the success that the Seahawks had on offense was more about what they did or what the Falcons didn't do on defense?
Oh no, I kind of push back on what Free said, because I feel like in the first half of this game, there were moments where guys weren't making plays, meaning guys in black and red jerseys. Like, for example, Ruka Rororo. If he puts Sam Darnold on the ground and finishes that play and get a sack, they might not get to put themselves in position to get that 10-point swing like Tori talked about earlier, right? So, it's just those things. And then, just it putting I feel like Brandon Dorlus was missed in this game, because Rook was put in a position to where normally Brandon Dorlus would be, which Dorlus thrives in, being able to fluctuate from that that 3 tech out to maybe a 4 hour or 5 tech, in the base defense. I feel like Doris flourishes in that. Ruka Roro, that's not his game. That's not his game. He, as far as against the run, those are some of the things that he has to work on. And you're not going to get better by playing football games doing it. This is going to be something you got to work on in the offseason. And I think that, when you think about it from that aspect, that's a big part of it for me. I feel like there were guys that were out there, they had the opportunity, they were put in position to make plays, and they did not do that. So for me, I would lean more towards the players. But however, I do understand, like, that's a good football team. That's a good football team. But Sam Darnold was looking like the Sam Darnold that's seeing ghosts in that first half, for sure. And when you think about it from that aspect, that just tells me that the game plan was there, and guys just didn't make plays when they needed to make plays. It was just a bad situation for the defense as a whole.
Yeah. And of course, Brandon Dorlus among the 6 inactives for the Falcons Sunday, which of course also included Drake London. But for you, Tori, when you kind of look at what happened in the second half, more Seahawks or more and what they did, or more on the Falcons and what they didn't do?
I agree with what Free said about, like, there were very obvious game plan specific things that they decided to take advantage of in the second half that they weren't really going after as much in the first half. But I also do think that, let's be real, I think this defense was tired. I think that they were pretty exhausted by the time that you got to the final minutes of that third quarter. I think that they didn't really have a lot of gas left in the tank. And I think that when you aren't having your offense do anything with opportunities that you gave them earlier in the game, i.e. the Mike Hughes interception that didn't turn into any points at all. I mean, I saw a stat where the Falcons have 16 takeaways this year. They've only scored 19 points off of those takeaways in response to those takeaways. The only team with less points scored are the Jets. The Jets have 2 takeaways this season, for context. So
yeah,
that doesn't, unfortunately, even if this defense is playing lights out, which we saw them play lights out in that first half, a good offense is going to start taking advantage and having their moments, as we saw the Seahawks do yesterday. It was just kind of one of those things that was a matter of time. Unless you're going to be able to find a way to help this defense out in that third quarter, like it was inevitable that this was going to be the end result, I think.
Yeah, because you think about the fact that the Seahawks taking away the kickoff touchdown, their next drive was a 5-minute drive. And you're right, Tori, like that doesn't really give that defense an opportunity to catch its breath. And then, of course, they go, and that was for a touchdown, but then they also get the ball back, go another 6 plays, take another 2 minutes off the board. And another reason that's so important is because really at halftime, everything was even the time of possession, right? Right around, I think it was like right around 15 or so minutes for each team, 16 minutes for each team. But then you come back and you start looking at the time of possession in the second half. And particularly, as you mentioned, that third quarter, you start wearing that defense down, and then you start to see the results. And that's why they're also able, the Seahawks are to tack on another 14 in that fourth quarter, because now they're cooking with gas. And in the meantime, they're just running and wearing down that Falcons defense. So when you look at it, from the perspective, and I wanted to ask about this as well, like with Divine Diablo, he made an interesting comment, but it was talking about returning to the field after a turnover. And he said, quote, honestly, we just all got to get on the same page. I got out there trying to defend every blade of grass. That's just how I play. You got to want it as a team. That's all I can say. And let me just preface by saying this. I'm not suggesting that Divine Diablo was calling out anyone in particular. And as I mentioned, he was talking about a particular situation, but I'll be honest, Jarvis, it made me think about the want to part as well on defense in the second half, as you start to see, like, you've given your offense every opportunity in the first half to do something, and they don't do something with it. And you kind of say, okay, the want to it was a question of mine as well. but mostly for the defense for the second half. But the 1-2 for the other two phases, I felt like it just wasn't there the entire game.
Yeah, I think that when you look at this offense and kind of where they are, there were moments even to start the game off. Even though I feel like Bijan Robinson had some good moments. Like he gave us some blue magic, right? It was there. It was out there. Oh man, it was great. It was great to watch. But there are also some moments where if you take just a little bit more time to kind of set up your block, you might turn a +7 or +8 into a +40, because it seemed like he just wasn't there, to start the game. He was being himself, right? He was being himself, but there were just moments. And then there was that other moment where he fumbled the ball, and that that speaks to this team. It speaks to having that want to. I'm not saying that Bijan doesn't want to be out there. No, not saying that. But your play says that. Your play says not necessarily that you don't want to be out there, but your play says that you're not focused. You're not locked in. Why are you fumbling the ball in your own territory when you are trying to put points on the board? You're trying to get back into this game. It just speaks to the mental, like the mental aspect of this team as a whole. Like we started when we jumped this bad boy off. The head coach up here saying like, man, that one play, woo, that knocked us out right there. I was like, bro, you still had 14 minutes and 30 seconds left in the third quarter to go. So that's it. And he was even asked about being able to say certain things like in those moments. And he was like, man, players got to play. Really? So it's all on the players. You done your job, like leading up to it. Oh, I made sure I got the schedule out for this week and practice and film study and all that stuff. I've done all I could do. No, it don't work like that, Jack. Head coach is always thinking about, okay, what about this scenario? You're playing out whole different scenarios in your head as the game is going along because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. So yeah, it just when you think about the mental makeup of this team. Yeah, you're going to question a lot of things if you have any type of sense. And that's why I question a lot of things because I saw an edge player who's been in this league for a long time, one of the best pass rushers in the last 5 or 6 years, get blocked by a wide receiver. Why? In what world is that supposed to happen? I'm just saying. You can argue against it if you want to, but I'm only going off of what I see. And I wouldn't mind being wrong about that one in particular.
I think there was a moment it may have been the fourth quarter where the halo board showed the defense kind of coming off of the field. And I felt like that moment, seeing kind of Leonard Floyd, seeing Jesse Bates, seeing kind of these leaders in your locker room look as dejected as they did. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't feel dejected and they shouldn't be, but that was very evident to me where this team was on this day, where it felt like at a certain point in that game, it was like everybody was just like, let's get it done. Let's move on. Let's, but then there was still 13, 14 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what's they're officially eliminated from playoff contention officially. And one of and then again, it's like extrapolated because you had the Carolina Panthers last week beat the Rams. And then you had the New Orleans Saints this week beat Tampa Bay. So you're seeing that this NFC South was I said this on the podcast last night, it's ripe for the taking. And you went into this season thinking that the Falcons were going to be the ones to take it, should have been the ones to take it. And I think that moment of seeing the defense kind of walk off the field and looking as dejected as they were was evidence of A plus B equaling C.
Yeah, I think, the Seahawks took advantage of the opportunities that the Falcons gave them, and the Falcons did not take advantage of the opportunities that the Seahawks gave them. And I think a lot of that is just owed to the Seahawks being a much more locked in, detail-oriented team that is able to do the things, all the little things that we're talking about that seem like nitpicks, but these are the things that if you consistently do them as a football team, they add up over the course of a game of 130 plus plays or whatever it is that help you win football games. And that has been an issue for this Falcon team throughout the entire season. I think that got exacerbated against this Seahawks team in large part due to how good this Seahawks team and kind of the polar opposite of the Atlanta Falcons in that regard, in terms of being a really detail-oriented football team. And you just kind of saw that culminate in this team, and it just kind of felt like at a certain point, like they just did not have the energy in the second half to go out there and really put up the fight that you wanted to see this team do, to Tori's point. And I think that's just kind of been a through line throughout the season, and just sort of, winning one game in your last 8 games, I think, leads to that sort of mental approach or lack thereof.
Yeah. Well, we will try our best to end on a high note when we come back. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, as we talked about, and suddenly everything hits different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets at the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting, it's best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can be next touchdown scorers, or bet next touchdown scorers rather. Drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be in the right middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Again, that's FanDuel.com to place those NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So, Tori, albeit in a losing effort, Bijan Robinson fumbling the ball, that was a tough one. But we do have to kind of look at the fact that he finished with 86 rushing yards on 20 carries, became the third player in NFL history with 3,500 plus rushing yards, 1,500 plus receiving yards through 3 career seasons. So we at least want to give flowers and just talk about the contributions of Bijan Robinson to this Falcons offense so far.
Yeah, I mean, this Falcons offense isn't the same without Bijan Robinson in it.
Yeah.
And I think Bijan Robinson is a needle mover for any team that he's on. It wouldn't matter if it was the Falcons offense or any other type of offense. I think Bijan Robinson is that special of a player. I know I just tweeted this story out, but like, just because Atlanta's record doesn't match the year and of like the magnitude of what Bijan Robinson has done this year, like, doesn't mean it should be overlooked. I've said this before and I would say it again. Like, a lot of times I feel like in the last few years, like, individual Falcons players have had like really, really good years, career years that would be talked about across the league if the team was winning. And I feel very strongly that Bijan Robinson this year would fall into that category, that if this team was still in playoff contention, if this team was around 500 in their record, more people nationally would be talking about the talent of Bijan Robinson. So vote for Bijan Robinson for Pro Bowl. Like, I think that's kind of it. Like, I think I'm worried about what the rest of his rookie deal looks like now that we don't really know exactly what 2026 is going to look like, but at least, you have Bijan.
Yeah, at least you have Bijan. And Aaron, that is somewhat of a bright spot. I mean, I know it almost feels frustrating because it's like, wow, you get out of Bijan Robinson just a player who continues to elevate his game. And again, taking nothing away, we know the fumble was a tough one yesterday, to a tough pill to swallow. But ultimately, you still have to give a lot of credit to what Seven has been able to do. And like Tori said, you really don't have the possibilities that you can, or coming into this season without a Bijan Robinson doing what he's doing.
Yeah, we've seen it throughout the season. On any given Sunday, Bijan Robinson could be the best player on the football field and one of the best players in the NFL. unfortunately for the Falcons, they haven't seen that enough to compensate for the other issues this upcoming season, but that's not meant to take away from Bijan or to denigrate the rest of the team. It's just like we knew he was a special player when the Falcons drafted him. As I joked many times over the years, it's like there's two types of people in the world. There are Bijan Robinson fans and those who haven't watched him play football yet. And so the instant you watch him play football, you immediately become a fan of his game. And we've gotten to see some really high highs from him where he's made some incredible plays, similar to what we saw for a decade here in Atlanta in Julio Jones. And hopefully we'll continue to see that in the coming years. It's just unfortunate that a lot of his success, individual success, is, as Tori said, being kind of overshadowed by the lack of team success that the Falcons are currently having. And hopefully brighter days are ahead for Bijan Robinson and this Atlanta Falcons team. But you just got to appreciate what you get from Mr. Walk on Water, Mr. Blue Magic at this point in time, because nothing else is promised for you. So it's just like, okay, well, at least I get to watch this guy play football every single Sunday. And that's something. It's better than nothing, I guess you could say.
And for you, Jarvis, when you look at Bijan, I mean, at least there's one bright spot on offense that's pretty much consistently bright, right?
Bijan Robinson, last time I checked, he is the offense team. What else is there at this moment right now? Looking at that game yesterday, man, feed Bijan Robinson more. Well, he did have 20 carries for 80-some yards, average about 4 yards a pop. I mean, that's pretty right on brand, but man, so he should have got 30 carries, probably, because there's nothing else that you can count on this offense. You can't count on Kyle Pitts. He'll give you moments. Yeah, that dime that Kirk Cousins threw to him, he caught over the shoulder. That was amazing. But you got him not fighting for balls and, dropping the ball, going up for the ball with one hand, and the defender not even holding your other hand. Why are you going up for one hand? Worst case scenario, they throw the flag if you do that, right? Because he's so close and close quarters with you. So I think that, Bijan deserves a lot of credit, right? He has to be perfect in order for this team to get wins. So, and yesterday was a moment where you look at it and you say, dang, man, he shouldn't have fumbled that rock. But, man, he can't make no mistakes. And the answer to that question is no, because this team is not good enough to overcome mistakes.
Yeah. So I saw something last night in the Chiefs-Texans game that was really interesting to me because, man, Jalen Watson put a hit on Jalen Noel. It was like the most beautiful, tackle. It was just, and what I saw in that was two things. Number one, Noel's fighting for that ball for his life. Number two, Jalen Watson is like, not today. And it was just two teams that down to the wire, they understood the importance of the game. And it seemed like no matter who was on the field, because I think it might've been the first play that one of the O-linemen for the Chiefs went down and his replacement came in and played a stellar game. I say that to say it felt like that either one of those teams just kind of never gave up. But I'm sorry, there were just moments where it felt like, and even the illusion of what Divine Diablo was, kind of saying was like, all right, this team, are we looking at a team that, and again, you guys can answer this how you please and if you want, but it feels like, okay, has this team already tapped out? Are they tapping out on each other? Are they tapping out on Ra? And is there a way to reset that? I mean, what are you guys seeing?
I think for me, I'm not going to sit up here. It's hard for me to sit up here and look at guys in the professional league and say that they quit. But
and I don't want to be that strong. Yes.
They've lost hope. There is no hope. Like, what are you playing for at this point? Because Raheem Morris can't sell them on, hey, guys, we got to go out here and get a win because we know that we're fully prepared and we got all the details down pat and we know that our offense is going to carry this team like we were sold on coming into the season. That's out the window. So I feel like right now, these guys have lost hope. And basically, everybody playing for contracts at this point. And you're going to see, as we go down the stretch, who wants to be here, who doesn't really necessarily care about being here, who wants another contract, who doesn't really care if they get another contract with this team. Let me walk in free agency. So you're going to see some different actions, I think, coming down the stretch. But I won't say they quit, but they definitely understand that, man, this season is a wash.
Yeah. I'll just say this. You hope that this team can show a little bit more fight on a short week against a divisional opponent. But it feels like for the last 8 weeks, we've been like, oh, you hope this team shows a little bit more fight, coming up this week and can sort of get that spark to turn their season around. And you thought maybe with the Saints win, beating a hated rivalry, that, that might be the spark for a strong finish late in the season. And we haven't gotten that yet. And so you just hope for that, again, for the fans out there that are still watching the game, still hoping for something for the future. You just hope you get some type of product that makes you feel like you don't waste your Sundays watching this team or this upcoming Thursday night watching this football team. But, based off of what we've seen over the last 2 months, there's just not a lot of hope right now for this football team. And again, maybe they can put up a little bit of a better fight. But again, we've been saying that for 2 months and it hasn't really quite delivered on this front, particularly over the last couple of games. So we'll see if the Falcons, have quote unquote quit or given up on the season, or if they still have a little bit more fight left in them.
Yeah, a little bit of pride as we wrap up the final 4 weeks of the regular season. Well, thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. You can catch Jarvis as a frequent contributor for Locked On Falcons, and check out some of Tori's great work at AtlantaFalcons.com. The Falcon Squad Show and Locked On Falcons are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will see you next time.